Part of the mythology around Bazball is built on one simple truth. England were dreadful before it, having had just one test win in their previous 17 games. But before we can discuss England's transformation into a team known for Bazball, we have to go back to one of the bleakest periods the test side has ever endured. In early 2022, England travelled to the Caribbean for a 3-match test series against a West Indian side that, to put it truthfully, sucked. It should have been a routine assignment and a soothing tour after the humiliating 4-0 defeat in the Ashes just a few months earlier. Instead, it became the final indictment of a broken system.
Another one creeps under the bat.
England lost 1-0, not because of extraordinary West Indian play, but because they were horrible.
A wind that has come swiftly, and he has given them his series victory.
Their batting unit consisted of Joe Root, and their bowlers lacked any potency or venom outside English conditions. Scores of 120 and 204 in Grenada to lose that series was the last nail in the coffin to send English cricket over the edge and into full-blown panic mode. They needed decisive change, and they needed it now. Chris Silverwood and Ashley Giles were fired, and Joe Root was axed as English captain. Into this despair stepped Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum. Their appointment as captain and coach ushered in the dawn of a new era for English Test cricket. It didn't matter that McCullum had never coached a Test side, or that Stokes had never captained full-time. What England desperately needed wasn't tactical genius, it was a culture change that introduced some much-needed swagger. McCullum and Stokes brought the simplest of philosophies. Stop fearing failure, stop obsessing over technical perfection and stats, and start valuing instinct and intent. This is why we still see guys like Zach Crawley and Ollie Pope in the Test side, or why Jacob Bethel, who doesn't have a first-class 100, is England's reserve batter for the Ashes. The first opponents to encounter this new English side were New Zealand in June 2022. Expectations were very low. New Zealand were defending World Test champions. They were disciplined, experienced, and well suited to English conditions. Additionally, England had not won a series in over a year. Yet, what happened over these 3 matches rewired the entire cricketing world's perception of what a Test team could do. At Lord's chasing 277, England batted like a T20 lineup transplanted into whites. Root played one of his finest 4th innings knocks. Bairstow struck fearlessly, and Stokes set attacking fields even when convention dictated retreat.
And he hits it hard. What a statement from England and their captain.
At Trent Bridge, they were set 299 and chased it in 50 overs, the fastest chase of that size in Test history at the time. Bairstow's 136 of 92 balls became the first true Bazball innings.
Through the gap, underway. That is a brutal 100 from Johnny Bairstow.
At Headingley, England again chased a massive total of 296.
What a way to finish the match. What a way to clinch the series.
3 chases, 3 wins. Suddenly, the hopeless team that couldn't even make 200 in the Caribbean were knocking off massive totals that teams usually collapse under. What you cannot forget though is that conditions always matter. Those pitches, especially Nottingham and Leeds, were ridiculously flat by English standards. The Duke's ball that summer lost its hardness and shape very quickly and offered far less lateral movement than ever before for seamers. The combination ensured long phases of easy run scoring. On such surfaces, attacking shots carry far less risk. Playing miles out in front of your body is no problem. Slashing wildly at balls away from your body, you'll middle them. It was all suited for batters to bully bowlers on flat pitches. It shortened games, overwhelmed New Zealand mentally, and created the illusion of a revolution. But it was the flat pitches that allowed the revolution to ignite this violently. The India test at Edgbaston that summer was the moment the myth exploded. With India 2-1 up in the series, and in the 5th and final test, England was set 378 to win. A target almost no chasing side in the 4th innings would even pretend to seriously pursue. The England of old would have shut up shop and looked to play for the draw. Instead, they ended up chasing it in 76 overs with 7 wickets to spare. Bairstow and Root batted like men freed from gravity. Every ball seemed hittable. The crowd was roaring 2 hours into the 4th innings as if it were a World Cup final. The global cricketing community fell in love with this version of England, not just because they were winning, but because the manner of victory was outrageous.
A 28 Test match 100 for a master.
Yet again though, the pitch was benign. Once the shine went, batting was almost a formality. India's bowlers, tired and bowling with lifeless Duke's balls, couldn't extract anything from the surface. The chase was lauded as heroic, and it was. The turnaround from just a few months prior was unbelievable.
How fitting then that Joe Root, a single from him, finally bring this series to a conclusion.
But the nature of the conditions in Bazball's early success shouldn't be forgotten. The South Africa series later in that summer of 2022 was their first stress test. England were obliterated in the first test at Lord's on a pitch that offered some life, a pitch you might expect to find in South Africa or Australia.
Gone straight through him. The pace of Nortje, he finally gets the radar right.
Rabada, Nortje and Ngidi found lateral movement and steep bounce. England's attacking intent turned into a liability.
Through the defences, Janssen gets his first in the second inning.
They were blown away and bundled out for 165 and 149, lost by an innings and were completely outclassed.
Holding and South Africa have a thumping victory here at Lord's.
It was the first sign of what would become the defining limitation of Bazball. If the pitch bites, the method breaks. But then, the surfaces for the remaining two tests flattened out again and England won both games. England actually looked like they were evolving Bazball during the 2022 tour to Pakistan, showing signs that they could mix aggression with grit instead of just bullying teams on flat home pitches. The first test in Rawalpindi was chaotic. Everyone remembers the 506 for 4 on the first day of that test and a wild final day win.
Gone. It's all over. Pakistan lose this in innings defeat. It has happened first time ever in Test cricket.
But the real development came in Multan and Karachi. Those pitches offered turn, slow bounce and long dry spells where scoring was difficult. But England, they didn't panic. Brook made a measured 108 in Multan.
Harry Brook is a serious talent with a massive future in the game.
And Joe Root put away the reverse sweep while Pope added calm middle order runs. Their bowlers kept working even on surfaces that gave them very little. In Karachi, they chased an amazing 167 on a worn surface by batting in partnerships instead of trying to blast their way through. For a moment, England looked like a side that could combine aggression with discipline and win in demanding conditions.
And what an end to the year of 2022 in Test match terms for that man Ben Stokes. They have won here 3-0.
Which is why their later failures felt so frustrating, because they showed they could adapt and then just drifted back into all or nothing cricket. England actually played some outstanding cricket during the 2023 Ashes, taking complete control of the first two tests with smart pressure, proactive tempo and bold tactical decisions that genuinely unsettled Australia. But then they threw away the chance to win the series through the most self-destructive parts of Bazball. At Edgbaston, they had Australia 227 for 8.
As Canary goes in the air, he's taken this one!
And later 89 for 3 in the chase. It leaked runs with overly attacking fields and lost key wickets through unnecessary aggression, turning a match they controlled into a narrow defeat.
Ice in his veins, Pat Cummins has led his team to a famous victory.
At Lord's, they again held strong positions but refused to slow down when the situation required it, losing wickets to impulsive strokes and collapsing under the short ball tactic rather than just absorbing the pressure.
Well done in this time.
England simply refused to apply the same level of grit that they'd shown in Pakistan, and the philosophy that powered them to moments of brilliance ended up costing them the Ashes when it needed moderation the most. This pattern matters because it foreshadowed what happened in India. Flat deck, method works. Spin minefield, method malfunctions. Subcontinental cricket demands long passages of defense, footwork discipline and patience. Bazball, however, was designed to avoid long passages of anything. It replaced attrition with expression. It told batters to preempt pressure and not absorb it. That philosophy works beautifully when the risk curve is shallow. It falls apart when the risk curve is steep. The 2024 India Tour exposed Bazball more brutally than any series before it. England started brilliantly on the flat Hyderabad pitch, pulling off a comeback win thanks to Ollie Pope's amazing 196.
150 for Ollie Pope in the glory of a wonderful innings.
And a fourth innings chase where the ball barely misbehaved.
And England a very famous win just in the last over of the day.
But from the second test onwards, the surfaces began turning on day one, and England instantly looked like a side trying to improvise their way out of technical bankruptcy.
What a ball! What a bowler!
In Vizag, they were bowled out for 253 and 292. In Rajkot, they were humiliated by 434 runs
And straight to the fielder.
after collapsing for 122 in their third innings. And in Ranchi, they lost inside 4 days despite having India 177 for 7 in their first innings.
So India win the series 3-1.
Across the final 4 tests, England didn't pass 300 once, and their only batter to average more than 40 was Crawley. Root, normally England's best player of spin, averaged barely mid-20s after repeatedly falling to rushed and premeditated strokes. India's spinners took the majority of England's wickets, often in clusters, 6 for 24 in Vizag, 7 for 35 in Rajkot, and 5 for 37 in Ranchi. The 4-1 scoreline wasn't flattering, but it reflected exactly what had happened. England looked fine when the ball didn't turn, and completely lost the moment it did, proving that Bazball thrives on flat decks but collapses instantly on surfaces demanding technique, patience and defensive skill. In the 2024-2025 Pakistan series, England offered the clearest example yet of Bazball's condition dependence. They destroyed Pakistan in the first test on a flat Multan road, piling up 823 for 7 declared, as Root and Brook cashed in on a surface with no movement, no turn and no real jeopardy.
Brook clubs it down the ground. He becomes only the 6th England batsman to make 300.
But the moment the fans were introduced and the pitch started turning, unsurprisingly, their entire philosophy came crashing down. In the second and third tests on turning tracks in Multan and Rawalpindi, Sajid Khan and Noman Ali took all 20 wickets in both matches, dismantling England with nothing more than steady, traditional spin. Every Bazball instinct turned into a liability. Premeditated sweeps, charges down the wickets and forced counter-attacks became repeat dismissals as England were bowled out for 242, 214 and then a humiliating 112 all-out to lose the series 2-1.
Beautifully bowled. Pakistan not only win the series, and it's a remarkable comeback.
Noman Ali and Sajid Khan who've completely turned this game.
Those last 2 tests exposed the reality behind the hype. Bazball thrives on flat decks where risk is low, but the moment a surface grips and demands technique rather than tempo, England look exactly as fragile as they did before the revolution. Meanwhile though, at home, the myth kept on growing. England had beaten Ireland, drawn to Australia in the Ashes in a series they should have won, they'd beaten South Africa, beat New Zealand again, and won a string of tests where the surfaces behaved exactly the way Stokes and McCullum could have dreamt. The ball went dead after 20 overs, batting became easy, fast scoring carried no real danger, and you could score 4, 5 and even 6 and over without feeling you were risking the match at all. England weren't revolutionaries at all, they were flat track bullies and very good ones at that. The problem is that the English setup leaned into this identity so fully that they convinced themselves it was a universal tactic. They bought into their hype so much that they convinced themselves that aggression needs no adaptation, that tempo wins absolutely everywhere, and that mindset defies statistics and even analysis.
How do you stay level, calm, balanced and forward thinking when the pressure is at its highest, and that's what excites me about the challenge.
Every time they faced a decent opposition attack on wickets with some life in them, they reverted back to the England of old. They showed no backbone, relied on one great player and would ultimately fall short.
It doesn't matter who the batsman is.
There is another pattern though, aside from the conditions. If England's batters represent the planets in our solar system, then Joe Root is the sun. In innings where Joe Root scores runs and occupies the crease, the entire English team prospers.
It's another 100 for Joe Root.
On the contrary though, take for example the first Ashes test, when Joe Root didn't score runs. Despite the likes of Brook and Pope scoring, England still failed to put up much of a score. It's because England, for all their Bazball bravado, still revolve around one player and one player alone. That man is Joe Root. Then came Perth last week, and it delivered the most predictable lesson of all. Western Australia is not Edgbaston, nor is it Trent Bridge. You cannot declare your way to dominance there, and you cannot preempt conditions either. The bounce is steep, the sea movement is real, good lengths take wickets, and your mistakes will prove costly.
Got him! He gets him again!
For the first time in years, England entered a test without the ability to shape the environment. They were forced to play the cricket the pitch demanded, and they did not know how. They lost the first test badly, not because their players lacked talent, but because their entire method is built on the assumption that they can dictate the terms.
A win for Australia, a memorable win, perhaps
It's a famous win.
On tough pitches, the pitch dictates everything. The great thing about cricket is it doesn't let you curate the entire world. To win everywhere, you must adapt everywhere. And Australia did it in the 2000s, and so did South Africa. The only way England are going to win on spicy Australian pitches is by tempering Bazball. If they can't do that, then they can expect to lose every test within 3 days and lose the series 5-0 again. To answer the question of this video, Bazball isn't bullshit, but the belief that it works universally absolutely is.